Welcome in, everybody. It is another YouTube live show. I am John Kurtz. Realizing my cup actually makes the camera shot here today. I'm changing things up a little bit. I just need you guys to know you've been clamoring for something to cover up the light switch. I have a bookshelf on the way, people. It's supposed to be here Tuesday. Now, unfortunately, Tuesday I will be traveling to Dallas Arlington, technically, for Big 12 football media days. I will be there on Wednesday and Thursday. Very much looking forward to that. You guys should get some very cool content out of that. So definitely make sure that you're staying tuned to the channel as far as that is concerned. But once I get back, hopefully next Sunday, we can get a bookshelf up there with some new decoration, including this picture that you can see above my head. There's a new picture that I got that came in today. Went and picked that up. Shout out to Art and Frame Warehouse for hooking me up on that. But we've got some good things in the works here as far as the background goes, okay? We've got a better background coming because I listen to what you guys have to say. I listen to the people. I am a man of the people. So that is coming soon. You're going to have to deal with a rather plain background for this show and hopefully this show only, and then things will be livened up a little bit. But, okay, as you can see, judging by the title of the video, judging by the tease leading into the video, we are talking San Diego State a little bit more today. San Diego State in the unenviable position right now of being between conferences more or less. It does not look like the Big 12 is going to be a landing spot. Not that I think any of you or many of us felt like that was a very, very likely possibility before the Dennis Dodd report came out this past week. But Dennis Dodd did report that the Big 12 does not really have interest in San Diego State right now. I know it had been framed by others before as kind of a mutual interest thing, like neither side had a ton of mutual interest in one another. And I mean, that seems to me like it would probably be fair as well. Just a little bit different of a slant and angle on this. But Dodd does have some more details on the San Diego State situation that we will definitely get to here today. He also went on ESPN 960 in Utah with Benjamin Criddle and had a couple of interesting quotes there. One about the money that the Big 12 will be making by the end of its TV deal. And the other was about UCONN kind of reigniting some of the smoke surrounding UConn and the Huskies in the Big 12. So talk about that too. I'm gonna have to pull up the rest of my outline here. I mean, we got a Dan Patrick report this past week trying to jump back into the conference realignment game. Probably of more interest to you guys is the podcast, the Orand and Marchand podcast, sports business reporters. Those guys, that I've been quoting them a lot here. I think they're about the best in the game, especially in terms of being unbiased opinions and information that is coming out about conference realignment and where everything stands. Paul Finebaum actually filled in for Andrew Marchand this week, who was on vacation. And Finebaum, one, did a pretty good job, and two, had some very glowing quotes, once again, about the Big 12 and some very negative quotes about the Pac-12. So if you were wondering what, again, a fairly neutral party in all of this really thinks, Paul Finebaum not so high on what's going on with the Pac-12 and continues to really love him some Brett Yormark and what the league has done. So ever since that comment going into the Big 12 championship game last year that nobody was going to watch, Paul Finebaum is completely flipped. Now, conspiracy theorists would say that is about ESPN and his employer, and he also made these comments on the heels of all those layoffs. So if you really want to get conspiratorial, you can say, hey, ESPN's shoving that down his throat, but they're also partners with the ACC, and Paul Finebaum has better things to say about the Big 12 right now than he does the ACC. So we have made a believer, folks. We have made a believer out of Mr. Finebaum, and I'm sure it's because that he watches this YouTube channel, checks out all you guys in the chat, and that is where he gets his opinions and information. We've also got the Big 12 preseason poll out. If you are trying to talk actual football here tonight, we can definitely do that because I absolutely have some thoughts on what we saw for the Big 12 preseason football poll that came out. Texas is your pick to win the league. K-State picked second. They got 14 first place votes. There are some pretty distinct tiers that broke out and how the media voted in this poll, which I think is very interesting. And I mean, the bottom line is, I think on paper, this should be an incredibly wide open, wild race for a Big 12 championship. And it should be about as fun as we have had in a long time, although the last 2 years have been pretty damn fun too. So it feels like much on the same trajectory, the same path that the Big 12 has been on here lately, which is a lot of fun, a lot of parity. But we did get that Texas vote in there, right? Everybody made sure to pick Texas as the preseason favorite here, which of course is not a smart thing to do. If you are a gambling man, you're playing the odds, not a smart thing to do. And unfortunately, We do have Bob Huggins potentially on the docket once again here tonight because he just decides to continue ruining his legacy by opting to sue West Virginia by saying that he should still be the men's basketball coach and claiming, the way I read it, kind of a technicality that he never actually resigned, that because correspondence came from his wife and not him. It's a crazy freaking story, and I just don't understand why this is the thing that Bob Huggins is insistent upon doing here to continue harming his legacy and make life more difficult for Josh Eilert and make life more difficult for West Virginia fans when that situation is already a bit of a mess. So we can talk about West Virginia, and I see Cougar Tracks in the chat saying a lot of West Virginia fans not too happy about being picked last. Yeah, there was a big drop-off. They were definitively the pick last in the poll. So, look, things are tough. I understand things are tough in Morgantown right now. So we can get into some of that on the show here as well. Anyway, appreciate all of you guys who are here. This is how it works. If you've been here before, you know exactly how it works. There's going to be a lot going on in the chat. We've got 160 people in here so far already. I am not able to keep up with everything going on in the chat, but you can make your voice heard, get your question or comment on the show, guarantee that it gets on the show, help control the content, and support the work I'm doing to bring you Big 12 content weekly on the channel. You do that by clicking the $ below the chat box where it says say something. I guess it just says chat now. How long have I been saying that it still says say something and now it just says chat? The chat box literally says chat right below that where the $ is. That is how you can attach a donation to your question or comment. It will tack it up at the top for me. It will guarantee that I read it, guarantees that it gets on the chat here tonight. And once again, is a way to support the channel. I could not do this without all the support that I get from you guys. You guys are awesome. And I very, very much appreciate that. So that is the way to get involved here tonight. A totally free way to help support the channel is just to give me one click. All I need is one click from you, one little move of the mouse, and one motion of your finger. That's all it takes. Just like that. Click that like button, please, on the video. And I would much appreciate it. Completely free way to support this channel. Same being with leaving a comment under the video in the comment section before, during, or after the video. All of that stuff helps with that YouTube algorithm, drives up the views, and everybody wins, right? Everybody wins with that. So love me, hate me, agree, disagree. Let me know in the comment section of the video what it is that you think, and that will help me out as well. John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo. If you'd like to support the channel that way, that is another way to do so, especially if you are not catching this live and you're catching it after the fact. John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo. Another way to do that. And with that, we're off and running. And we say hello to Julius. What's up, Julius? Julius Maximus back in the chat. Thank you for your generosity as always, my friend. Very, very much appreciate it. Julius says, howdy, John. It's been a minute since I've caught a live show. Just want to show some support and ask the people to like the video. And of course, go Cougs. Hey, well, thank you for that, Julius. Go Cougs indeed. Of course, Julius, a BYU fan, as you can see from the profile picture there. Curious what BYU fans thought of that Big 12 preseason poll. I have them here. I was going to say, what tier did they land in? I'm trying to remember how the voting specifically broke out. Yeah, I had them at you could kind of consider them tier 3 or tier 4, depending on how you want to go with that. But that's where BYU landed in the poll. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10th in that Big 12 preseason poll. I'm sure BYU fans probably would like to have been a little bit higher. But anyway, interested for the BYU take. We'll see what the Cougs think of all that. But Julius, much appreciated. Thank you for stopping by. Thank you for the well wishes. I always appreciate it. You're a very valuable member of the community here. And thank you very much for being here. So you want to be like Julius, click the $ below the chat box where it says chat. And that is how you attach a donation to your question or comment to make it on the show, much like Grandan. What's up, Grandan? Grandan says, will the Pac-12 Media Day on July 21st finally call the bluff of its hapless commissioner? Could he actually kick the can down the road farther? Oh, you betcha he could. You absolutely betcha he could. And the latest that we saw on that actually came from John Orand on the aforementioned podcast, the Orand and Marchand podcast. I'm going to try to pull up the exact quote here. He said the Pac-12 will likely know what it has in a month and be ready to announce something around Labor Day. What that is remains relatively unknown. Now, that is Jason Scheer was quoting what he heard from John Orand on that podcast. I heard it. I listened to the podcast while I was driving today, but did not get a chance to write down the direct quote. But he did say that. He said, look, in about a month, I would have this is him talking, and I'm paraphrasing him here. But he said, in about a month, I would imagine the Pac-12 will have an idea of what it is that they're going to have for this deal. and potentially would be ready to announce something around Labor Day. Now, a part of that, though, is if you know what you have in about a month, then everybody's going to have to sort out what it is they're going to do exactly. And I think that's the delay there, because about a month would be around August. We're looking at that's like a 2-month period here. So you'd have a month to figure out what it is, and then another month for everybody to react. And then you could announce if everybody's on board and ready to go. So that was the latest timeline there. That's also from John Ourand, who in the midst of all of that said he doesn't think Apple is particularly close on this. So that is not he was careful to say it's not like Apple is completely out. It's not like Apple is a total no-go. In fact, he's been very careful with any entity here to say that they're not totally out of this, and that he doesn't like doing that because someone could always come back around, but it means they could come back around at a more discounted price in all likelihood. So he did not have a lot of optimism that this is some like mega deal with Apple, which that seems to have been a lot of the scuttlebutt lately, that Pac-12 folks would think that Apple is heavily involved here. So, I mean, I don't know. Most of what you get from Marchand and Ourand is kind of like, we don't know where this is coming from, because everybody in the industry says it's not any of the main, ESPN, Fox, NBC, et cetera, and it's not going to be Apple, Amazon. So what does that leave? Who is this going to be? And I guess when I say it's not going to be, they're saying it's not likely to be. So I don't know. Apparently it's coming from somewhere, but even Paul Finebaum was taking some cracks at the Pac-12 on this podcast, because he was with Robert Robbins, the president at Arizona, about a month ago. I think he said a month or two ago. And Robbins at that time said, hey, I think we're close on a deal. And then, of course, they weren't. So Finebaum brushed it off basically the same way I've been doing, and equating it to like the boy who cried wolf. We can't believe this until we actually see something, because we've just heard it too many damn times by this point. So that's kind of your latest update on the timeline, Granddam. But I would say right now the odds are that they absolutely will be kicking the can down the road, because we're 11 days out from Pac-12 media days, right? We're not far, and they're going to have to say something. The interesting part there, and I think the fireworks there, will be Kliavkov's press conference. I mean, I presume that he will do one. That's typically your standard operating procedure at a media day, is that you kick it off with kind of the State of the Union address from the commissioner. And my goodness, the State of the Union right now is just such a mess for the Pac-12. There's such a silver cloud, like a dark cloud, hanging over everything they're doing on the football field right now because of this TV deal. But the other part that's very interesting is George Kliavkov has not been one, when he has spoken publicly, to really hold back much. Like he's said some crazy bleep, man. I mean, he's come out and he kind of gets this like whiny edge to him. Of course, there was the comment about, we're not sure if we're done shopping there yet or not. When it came to the Big 12, would love to know, George, at this point, if you guys have decided whether or not you're done shopping at the Big 12 yet or not. But also, even beyond that, claiming that UCLA was making a financial mistake in leaving for the Big Ten. And then, of course, the worst defense, saying that his league was going to catch up to the Big Ten and the SEC financially at some point. Like, when he has spoken, he tends to be kind of defensive and say fairly outrageous things like that. So we shall see, but I am extremely intrigued to find out how it is exactly that Kliavkov will handle that. My expectation, Grandan, I would tell you right now, is that the Pac-12 would not have anything done. Certainly not anything like officially announced by then. I would think like if something is out there, maybe we start to get some reports about it, but I have a hard time seeing that it would be all done. Everybody would feel great about it, and or at least good enough to sign on the dotted line about it by that point in time. So no, I think they're not going to hit that kind of soft deadline that was thrown out there by John Wilner. I will also be interested to see how he covers it, how the Pac-12 reporters in general sort of cover this, if that is going to be the case, because the latest soft deadline was set out there by the man himself in John Wilner. And now I believe he's been on vacation. He's just been silent on social media and not anything up in the way of articles here lately. So this is a time when you're seeing a lot of people on vacation, right? I mean, so this is kind of a dead time. I think once we get back into that late July Pac-12 media day, it's going to kick everything back into gear. Of course, next week here too with Big 12 media day, but it feels like we're still kind of ramping back up. And then once you're post media day, I mean, then we're getting into August, and then it's like game on, man. I mean, we're getting close to the season, and everybody starts that countdown. So that is where we're at, man. That is where we're at. Appreciate you, Grandan, as always. Snake, what's up, Snake? Thank you for being here. Snake says, "What's your Thread profile name?" I am on Threads. We will see. I tried to post. Actually, I think I even posted like a YouTube link today. Just figured, hey, what the hell? Might as well try to get a little bit of traction there. I am on Threads. It is not quite the same username. It is JL Kurtz 2. So go follow me on Threads. My phone is right here. I better hear all of you blowing this thing up and go in and follow me on Threads. Okay? That's what I want from you. That is my other request of you. I'm not using it a whole lot right now. It's kind of more contingency plan for if Twitter is going to go under. And it's, the algorithm's a little bit interesting right now on Threads, but it's been fine. It's been fine. So yeah, you can find me there. Emaw Tom, what's up, Emaw Tom? Emaw Tom, I appreciate you being here. Thank you for your support. He wants to know who my preseason Big 12 players of the year are. I'm just going to pull up the full list so that I have that for you guys. Well, that's the actual poll. Big 12 announces media preseason football team. Here we go. All right. So offensive player of the year was Jalen Daniels. Defensive player of the year is Jalen Ford. Newcomer of the year is Treshaun Ward. I think, one, I'm pleasantly surprised that Treshaun Ward got newcomer of the year. I think he's going to be great, and I think he has every opportunity to take home that award. I would have to do some real studying, and I know, like, I use this as kind of a crutch right now. Like, I didn't feel comfortable. I never feel comfortable, like, voting on these things because I just have not had the time to totally dive in with all the research, especially now that I'm out of the business full time. So I'm starting to do that, though. This weekend I did. I started that process, and I plan on doing a lot more on the drive as I'm riding. Well, my guy Cole drives me on the way to Big 12 Media Days. So I will hopefully have some better answers for you coming up soon. But I think, like, offensive player of the year, I mean, I understand why Jalen Daniels gets offensive player of the year. I bristle a little bit. Last year, Will Howard, for instance, if we're going to use him as the example, Will Howard had a better yards per attempt. He had a better completion percentage, better touchdown to interception ratio in Big 12 play, which Will Howard did not really play barely at all in the non-con because Adrian Martinez still was. So you compare 5 Big 12 games for Jalen Daniels, 6 for Will Howard, better yards per attempt, better touchdown to interception, better completion percentage, and a much, much better offensive efficiency. Points per drive for K-State was 5th in the country during that time when Will Howard played. And it was, he was like around 3.4 points per drive, and Jalen Daniels was like 2.1. So I think the thing with Jalen Daniels is everybody remembers the red hot start, and he was phenomenal. He was fantastic. Those are not the greatest defenses in the world, like Tennessee Tech, Houston, West Virginia. In hindsight, not the greatest defenses in the world that he was going up against at the beginning of the year. Yes, he had an injury to battle, but kind of fell back down to earth. And Jason Bean put up statistically very similar numbers and better in some categories when he was actually playing in there. So to me, it felt more about the system than it did the player there in Daniels. But to argue with myself, I would come back and say, look, whoever is healthy and playing quarterback at Kansas with Andy Kotelnicki as the offensive coordinator in there is going to put up numbers. They're going to put up numbers with their offense. So it's a fine choice. Like, I understand it. I think people like the underdog story. He certainly is an exciting player stylistically, and people remember that run at the beginning of the year when they were one of the stories of college football and forget a little bit some of the fade at the back end of it. And he punctuated it with a great performance in the Liberty Bowl too. In fairness, have to give him that as well. So, my Texas take is that I get, like, Quinn Ewers certainly has the potential to be the offensive player of the year, but I don't believe in Texas winning the actual league, so that makes it a little bit tougher for me to buy. The thing with Will Howard is I wonder if the numbers, like just in terms of sheer raw numbers, if they will hold up enough to be impressive enough over the course of an entire season for K-State to garner that sort of attention. So I almost like default. I tell you who's a sleeper there is actually Dylan Gabriel. And I have told people, like, I just wonder how high the ceiling actually is for Gabriel, but Oklahoma has such a favorable schedule this year, which is 3 of the 4 newcomers, and they miss K-State and Tech. I think they have a favorable enough schedule that Dylan Gabriel could be in the conversation. I even think, like, Xavier Worthy could be in the conversation. Honestly, if you really held my feet to the fire, I guess I probably would have filled out Will Howard on my ballot. And call me a homer, but I think I probably would have filled out Will Howard on that ballot, thinking that K-State is probably going to win around 9 games, be in contention there. And I think Kansas was picked 9th. I mean, that's the other thing. I have a hard time seeing in reality that being a thing, that Kansas could be picked 9th and still have the offensive player of the year in the league. I think if Jalen Daniels is the offensive player of the year in the league, they're going to finish higher than 9th in the Big 12. It's hard for me to square those things up. Defensive player of the year, I mean, I think that one's pretty easy. I don't know that we have to need to have much more discussion than Jalen Ford at Texas. I think he's definitely your defensive player of the year in the league. So it's a very long-winded answer there. And once again, fully admitting that I'm just not well enough studied on everybody yet, and absolutely need to get there. But that's my thoughts as of right now. R-Web, what's up, R-Web? Great to see you here. R-Web, of course, layups and dominoes. Yes, the Pac-12 continuing to just dunk all over the Big 12. It's been a layup to get that payout number higher than what the Big 12 has. That's why, it's taken so long. Just so many numbers. I think that's really what it is, R-Web. It's been such a layup to get that number higher than what the Big 12 is going to offer that it takes a long time. When you have more numbers, more digits, a little trickier for everybody on the accounting end to deal with all those numbers and break it all down. I'm sure it's, Kliavkoff is probably just like Scrooge McDuck in a giant room full of money, trying to count it individually and divide it all up. And that's exactly why it's been taking so long. So having understood that, it's actually pretty good context that you give us there, R-Web, with the layups and dominoes. So, yeah, by the way, all hail Lord Karen with the layups and dominoes comment there, R-Web. Jay Rodriguez, what's up, Jay Rodriguez? Thank you for being here. Jay Rodriguez says, go Houston. Thanks, Sean Kurtz. Well, thank you, Jay Rodriguez. I appreciate you being here. And shout out to your Houston Cougs, another fan base. I would be interested to see how they reacted to where they were picked in the Big 12 preseason poll, which obviously is toward the bottom. Although that one is, you had Dana Holgorsen basically saying, sorry, I'm trying to bring up the poll here. Yeah, Dana Holgorsen saying at one point, Houston kind of needed to step up their game facility-wise and just with everything across the board to get ready for the conference. That kind of sent some warning signs to me about what he thinks about how the adjustment is going to be here. But Houston, as such, was picked 12th in the Big 12 preseason poll. You had UCF at 8. They were the highest newcomer. BYU at 11, Houston 12, Cincinnati 13, West Virginia is picked last there. So let me know, Coug fans, how you guys feeling about all of that. And thank you once again, Jay Rodriguez. Christian, thank you for being here, Christian. Always appreciate you and your support of the channel. Christian says, just got my ticks to see the Cougs host Cincinnati in September. Hey, all right. What will be your first new conference mate game you'll attend? Very good question. I don't actually know yet because I don't know. I don't know this year if I'm going to be able to really do it. And I obviously would love to travel to see K-State at some point in time, but they don't have a road trip this year to one of the newbies. They host Houston and UCF and miss the other two. So I guess your answer probably is there, Christian. Just whoever K-State plays on the road first out of the newcomers, I will certainly make a concerted effort to try to get to that game for sure. I know that if it's in Provo, I will be there just because, the setting looks so gorgeous. That's nothing against the other 3 schools, but man, I love the mountains. I love the whole backdrop in general over there. Like I've definitely got to check that one out. But I would make a very concerted effort to get to any of them just to check out what that environment is going to be like and be at a new place. I've been to all of the current Big 12 road venues many a time during my 10 years on the beat covering K-State on a day-to-day basis. So anyway, typical me, you guys. Hey, it's me. I'm the problem. It's a Taylor Swift quote. Taylor Swift has been in Kansas City the last 2 days, so I've been hearing a lot about it. I have not actually really gotten into the topic du jour, the topic at hand here over 20 minutes into the video. So let's get to that. Dennis Dodd says the Big 12 is out on San Diego State. Here is first paragraph from the article. Though San Diego State once believed the Pac-12 and Big 12 were interested in adding it to their respective conferences, the Big 12 has little interest in bringing San Diego State aboard, sources indicated to CBS Sports this week. This despite Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark's stated intent to expand his league to the West Coast. Rather, the Big 12's current expansion focus continues to be on UConn and any Pac-12 schools that may be shaken loose once it has a media rights deal to pitch to its membership. Pretty consistent with what we have been seeing from a lot of places, that the Big 12's real expansion focus right now is on the 4 corner schools and then on UConn. And, maybe we've even still seen a little bit mixed in there about Gonzaga and the potential of adding the Zags. But it has seemed pretty clear. I think this is one of those situations where actions speak louder than words, and the lack of action on the Big 12's part, plus the lack of action on San Diego State's part with the position that they're in right now and how they've just been totally boxed in to feeling like they can't do much. They're a man without a conference at this point. The fact that neither one has made an aggressive move toward the other tells you all you need to know about what the real legitimate interest is there. I don't think we really needed reporting to show us that. If the Big 12 were truly in this for just going for the Pac-12 kill shot and picking up San Diego State for that, I think you would have seen a very aggressive move by now. Because what do we know about Brett Yormark? Like him, hate him, whatever. He's been very aggressive. He's typically a very aggressive guy. He's not afraid to go after what he wants and what he thinks is going to be good for the league and not afraid to take some chances. So if you're looking at it and saying, hey, the Pac-12 screwed the timeline up on this, San Diego State is just out there without a conference. They literally don't have a home right now. They're trying to wait to see if they can get this $6.6 million. If you really wanted them, you'd go grab them. Now, there are problems with that, as been pointed out in this chat before. You'd have to work out. I mean, the pro rata clause would not extend to them officially, so you'd have to negotiate that with the TV networks. Maybe it means San Diego State coming in at a partial share, and I know they've been really steadfast in saying that they want a full share when they do join a league, if and when they do join a league. So there are some hangups there. But I would think Yormark, if he truly felt deep down, this is something that would be really valuable to the conference and we need to do it, you would have seen an aggressive move by now because the blood was in the water as far as that goes. And so I'm totally open to the actual deal here is just that neither side was totally interested in each other. Maybe San Diego State had said yeah, even if this doesn't work out, we'd rather just wait around for the Pac-12. It's not going to make sense for us to go take all of our Olympic sports to the Big 12 and have to do all that traveling. Where we long fancied ourselves being in the Pac-12. It's right here. We're on the precipice. We're just going to wait it out for this media deal. And hey, maybe we have to wait an extra year, but we'll get it figured out. So maybe that had been clearly communicated to the Big 12 and the Big 12 saying okay, we don't want to mess with it. I would still proclaim to you that I think in a time of great need and kind of a time of desperation, probably too strong for San Diego State, because again, I think they have more leverage over the Mountain West than what is being portrayed. But in a time of conflict, that the Big 12 could have still come in and made an aggressive push there had they really thought that was going to be valuable. So it truly does seem like some combination of lack of interest from both sides is what is prevailing here. And you're just not going to see the Big 12 aggressively pursue San Diego State, which, San Diego State is a complicated one to me as far as whether how much value it would really have. It gets you into that West Coast time zone, which again, another piece of evidence that would suggest the Big 12 really does not have much interest here because they check boxes, would hurt the Pac-12 and would get you into the time zone that Brett Yormark really wants to get into. But everything else seems to be too much of an issue. Not having the pro rata clause kick in because they're not a Power 5 is an issue. Adding a fifth consecutive team from outside of a Power 5 conference, there maybe would be some perception issues as far as that goes. If you were to add San Diego State, even if you think they are very deserving and have a ton of potential. So there are some hangups there. There are definitely some hangups there. More, though, from Dennis Dodd's article. It is not even close to being done here. Meanwhile, San Diego State continues to wait. The Pac-12 remains the best option for the Aztecs. The Big 12 is at least previously interested, dating back to a tour of the campus taken by former Commissioner Bob Bowlesby before he left office at the end of last year, sources told CBS Sports. So that's interesting. We know that the Big 12 had at least enough interest to send Bob Bowlesby out there for a tour of San Diego State's campus. Interesting info. I had not seen that nugget reported anywhere else. It says now San Diego State is not only hearing crickets, it's sitting in limbo. So I'm trying to think, end of last year. So we're talking about, 7 months ago, Bowlesby would have taken that tour when the Big 12 perhaps would have just been still doing some due diligence there. I mean, to me, that feels more like could definitely still be in the time frame where you're just covering bases, making sure that you have all the info you need if you did ever decide to go that route. Not that that would be a real sign of a ton of genuine interest. Wicker, this is from the Dodd article. Wicker has indicated from the beginning that his school will deserve a full conference share wherever it goes. So I mentioned AD at San Diego State thinks they deserve full share wherever they break in. That would have been $31.7 million as currently distributed by the Big 12. The league is not even giving full shares to its 4 newest additions in BYU, Cincinnati, Houston, and UCF. They only get $18 million in 23, $19 million is 20 in 24. Of course, nothing can be fully settled until the Pac-12 lands a media rights deal. Without it, there is no idea what a full share would be for SDSU. Says the school doesn't appear to have much leverage, let alone a home at the moment. And I would kind of disagree with that again. Says it wants to stay in the Mountain West, at least in the short term, giving uncertainty facing the Pac-12, but its status is up in the air. Conference bylaws require a 1-year notice for a school to leave. The Mountain West says, based on that June 13th correspondence, it considers the Aztecs out of the league beginning July 1, 2024. There's a meeting of presidents on July 17th with San Diego State's status expected to be discussed at that time. As of now, the school would have to wait at least another year to leave the Mountain West without paying the doubled $34 million exit fee. Wicker is on record as saying his school cannot afford that number. And it makes sense. They're waiting on this withheld payment right now, and the yearly payout is $6.6 million. That's the yearly payout that you're getting for the league and for your TV rights. Going to be hard to pay a $34 million price tag to leave the league, right? Now, if that were really to happen, a lot of times these things get whittled down to like 60, 65% is kind of what we've historically seen on the exit fees. But still a large chunk of change, still a lot of money. And ultimately, I kind of refuse to believe that there's a scenario where the Mountain West legitimately says, like, hey, we're going to cut off our nose to spite our face. Forget these guys. They left us twice. Not letting you back in the conference. Have fun. And then the Mountain West is going to hurt itself financially and exposure-wise and, I guess to prove a point. But I've compared this to, really, to me, it feels like in a divorce, like a stay together for the kids sort of situation here. Like, we know where this is going. We know that San Diego State and the Mountain West are not going to be long-term partners. They will be splitting off. But right now, they both sort of need each other for a common reason. For the Mountain West, it's to milk as much money out of having San Diego State in the conference for now as they can before they lose that brand, and plus just exposure. And 2, the San Diego State just needs a conference home to play in. They need that $6.6 million. They need a conference home to play in. They want to keep doing what they're doing until it is that they do get the jump up to Power 5. So that's your stay together for the kids scenario. Got to stay together for now, even though you know what the ultimate end goal is going to be here. So keep an eye on July 17th. I mean, certainly we'll be paying attention to that here on the channel to see what that meeting churns out. But that's where I would imagine cooler heads probably have to prevail there. And the Mountain West just look itself in the mirror and be like, look, we do need these guys. We do need these guys. Good, solid football program, just went to the national championship game in basketball. Like, we need these guys as long as we can get them. A little bit more here from Dennis Dodd. He says, if there was a Pac-12 deal, San Diego State would more than likely be way down the road as a future league member. However, the conference is now inside a year before its current deal expires with ESPN and Fox. Industry sources continue to tell CBS Sports there is scant interest from the 4 major linear giants in the Pac-12. So I know Pac-12 folks will roll their eyes and say, well, hey, that's Dennis Dodd saying that. Doesn't mean much. He's the most homerish Big 12 reporter on that side. And I would say, hey, in some ways, there is some fairness to that. I would also say it's pretty consistent with what Andrew Marchand has been saying for a long time, who is an unbiased resource on this. And I would tack on to Dodd says scant interest, so not much interest from the 4 major linear giants. And John Orand on his podcast with Paul Finebaum again said he doesn't feel like Apple is anywhere close to having something done with the Pac-12. So there's 5 pretty major players that you're getting from sources saying are not very interested in the Pac-12 right now, which makes it difficult to figure out where exactly this money in this deal is going to come from. At least by all the conventional means here, we're having a hard time figuring out what exactly is going to happen there. Article continues. That assertion continues to confuse industry experts who wonder where the Pac-12's revenue and visibility is going to come from. Coaches and ADs are concerned that a deal heavy on streaming broadcast might impact recruiting. A linear cable window may be closing for the Pac-12 with NBC Universal if WWE and NASCAR re-up with the networking deals that are expiring in the near future. Here's a quote from Robert Robbins at Arizona, thrown in here. It says, quote, there are still just discussions, nothing definitive, that's for sure. I think the narrative that it's going to be an all streaming deal is ridiculous. So Robert Robbins, president at Arizona, says, I think that means the narrative that it's going to be an all streaming deal is ridiculous. Not a fan of the rumor mongers out there among us who say this is going to be an all streaming deal. Well, I think what that does is it gives you insight into like what the Pac-12 leadership thinks. They do not want an all streaming deal or something that's going to be incredibly, incredibly heavy on the streaming, which seems to be one of the challenges here for the Pac-12 to balance that with trying to get as much money as possible and have a monetary amount that will keep everybody around and that can let them market some sort of a win here against the Big 12. So I don't know that we needed that confirmed, but it does give you a little insight into the mind of where these people are at. Don't like the idea of the all streaming deal. That has been made pretty clear by Robert Robbins, who controls one of the schools that might actually leave. One of the schools that is rumored to be trying to make a decision. And beyond that, I mean, they've basically come out and said, like, we've got a decision to make. So it's not just rumors. That is also that they may well actually do it because they have been saying that themselves. All right, let's hop back into some donations here. Again, if you want to be on the chat tonight, the way to do so is to click that $ below the chat box where it says chat. That is how you can attach a donation to your question or comment. We'll ensure that it gets read. We've got 300 plus people in the chat. Can't keep up with everything. Only way to make sure you get on the show is to click the $ below where it says chat in that chat box. We'll pin it up at the top for me, let you control the content, and supports the work that I'm doing to bring you Big 12 content on a weekly basis here, and I much appreciate all of you guys' support. Michael, what's up, Michael? Thank you for being here, Michael. Michael says, love seeing BYU picked 11th. # go Cougs. Well, thank you for weighing in there, Michael. That's kind of what I was asking from the other fan bases that were picked lower in this Big 12 preseason poll. I wanted to know what your reaction was to that, how exactly it is that you're feeling about that. And look, as a K-State fan, Michael, I've got to tell you, that's a good place to be in. Underlooked, undervalued, and full on motivation. That's typically worked out pretty well for my Cats. Last year, they definitely were not picked to win the league. They did win the league. This year, it's a weird place for me where K-State gets 14 first place votes and is picked second in the league, highest since 2004. All right, K-State's won now 3 Big 12 championships since 2003, and the last time that they were coming off of one was the last time they were actually picked this high in the league, and that was back in the North-South days. They were picked first in the North at 2004. So I am not used to this level of it. I'm kind of more comfortable, Michael, where you're at there in the poll, saying, hey, we're picked way too low. We've got a chip on our shoulder this year. Jack, what's up, Jack? Thank you for being here. Appreciate your support. Jack throwing me a nice little keep it up guy lifting weights emoji there. Appreciate that, Jack. Thank you. I'm trying to see if there's a question or comment that maybe I just missed going along with that too. I'm not seeing anything, so let me know if I am missing that, Jack. But I'm going to take that as just a great little bit of support. Thank you, my friend. Appreciate you for being here, and thank you for tossing that support the way of the channel. Eric, what's up, Eric? Thank you for being here, Eric. Eric says, what is your preseason, Eric Worthen, what is your preseason ranking for this coming season? TCU was ranked 7th last year, and OSU is there this year. All I'm saying is that OSU could compete for the top of the conference this year. I'm actually glad, Eric, that you brought up Oklahoma State. I'm very glad that you brought that up because Oklahoma State got a first place vote in the poll. So that was something I know really turned some heads. Oklahoma State was picked 7th overall, but they had one first place vote. Baylor did not get a first place vote, and they were picked 6th. TCU got 3. They were picked 5th. And then you got Oklahoma and Tech with 4, K-State 14, Texas 41. And I know a lot of people are like, who the hell did that? Well, I heard my guy, Ari Temkin, who does a great job hosting on the Big 12 Sirius XM channel, among many other things. Guy has a lot of jobs going on in the media industry. You can hear him a lot of places. But he was on with the 365 crew. And if anybody listened to that interview, he went on there and said, look, I was the one who picked Oklahoma State. And I thought he actually gave a pretty good reasoning for it. It was more or less, and I'm speaking for him here. He did a much more eloquent and better job speaking to this. So I would highly encourage you to go listen to that on the 365 Sports channel. It was basically like, look, this league is wide open. I don't trust Texas. Why would you trust Texas? So I'm going to take the coach that really has been the most trustworthy in this league that is around here, has been the most trustworthy for the longest amount of time right now, and that's Mike Gundy. Plus, Alan Bowman is a quarterback that's competed in the Big 12 before. It looks like they did a pretty good job replacing Spencer Sanders at QB, at least on paper. So give me that coach in a wide open league and in a league where the conference champion 2 years in a row has come out of nowhere. Maybe out of nowhere is a little bit strong, certainly at least for K-State last year, but conference champ has not been somebody that was really expected. So I will take the consistency and take that guy. I don't agree with it. I would not pick Oklahoma State to win the league, but I think there's a pretty sound case for that. And honestly, with as wide open as the league seems this year and as many flaws as everybody has, I don't think that's like a terrible, horrible answer like it was getting panned as by a lot of people who just saw that immediately and were like, who the hell did this? There's more sound logic to it than you actually think there. So, I mean, I think Oklahoma State absolutely could because Gundy does have that pedigree, and I don't think they're totally lacking in talent. Like, I don't think that roster is completely devoid of talent. But my concern with Gundy is more just like in the long term. I mean, agree or disagree with like the guy personally. My worry for him is just that he seems to be kind of begrudgingly adapting to the game, begrudgingly adapting to the portal and NIL and all the changes that have come to college football. That to me makes me wonder about your long-term viability, especially coming off of an offseason where there's a lot in and a lot out, right? They brought in a lot of guys in the portal, but that's because they had a ton of players leave and some pretty high-profile players leave. To me speaks to like, I don't know, you may not be completely on top of managing a culture the way that you need to be in this era, which is not like Gundy, like a more old school, tough, hard-nosed sort of guy. That's not really him. You know, what we know about Mike Gundy is that does not really jive with what he is, like who he is as a person. Can a tiger change his stripes in the name of trying to win and adapt in this sport? I wonder about that long term, but that doesn't mean that this year couldn't still be a pretty darn good year actually on the field. So I think Oklahoma State's a super interesting case. I mean, I think TCU is a super interesting case. You brought up TCU as well there. Chandler Morris beat out Max Duggan last year. I was actually reading one of the preview articles for TCU just yesterday, and I saw that it said, hey, I mean, the passing game actually could have a much higher ceiling this year with Chandler Morris. And I was like, you know, maybe much higher is strong, but if it's saying like it could have a higher ceiling, that may not be wrong because Chandler Morris did beat out Duggan last year. Duggan was a little more about like toughness, utilizing his legs, very gritty, finding a way. Maybe Chandler Morris makes that a little prettier, makes everything hum. You know, there's a high-profile transfer that's been infused in the wide receiver core. They've still got like a 6'10" receiver to throw. I mean, that's an exaggeration, but a 6'5" dude to go throw the ball up to in that passing game. Like, TCU is going to have athletes. I don't ever doubt that. They were consistently recruiting as the number 3 team in the league with Texas and Oklahoma here in this conference for a long time. TCU is going to have guys and going to have talent. Just they took big hits. They replaced them with some great players in the portal, but they took big hits across the board. We saw how many guys were drafted from that roster this past year. Feel like it may take them some time to get going. And there was some fortune in, I don't say that as a knock, but like very close game. They won a lot of very close games. Let me put it that way. They won some very close games last year. And sometimes, you know, if you're a Phil Steele disciple, you'll read about how much the pendulum can swing back and forth on that from year to year. Tend to believe that may become a little bit more difficult. And that's what like Chandler Morris would have to prove. Like, we know Max Duggan could rise to the occasion in those sort of situations. We saw him do it time and time again. So anyway, some thoughts there on those schools. I realize maybe you're asking like about the overall thing. I did not submit an official ballot. I think Texas and K-State being in the first tier is fine. I think Oklahoma, Tech, TCU, Baylor, Oklahoma State to me is all kind of like I can make a case for any one of those as the number 3 teams. That feels like the next sort of tier. KU and UCF, I think, are right on the cusp of that too. So I'm cool with them being right there at 8 or 9, and that's pretty tough luck. That speaks to the depth of the conference that we're sitting there with UCF and Kansas at 8 and 9. And then, yeah, everybody else, Iowa State, BYU, Houston, Cincy, West Virginia, I have much more in the way of question marks for them. So as a general way that worked out, I think the tiers I'm pretty okay with how the media actually voted there in that preseason Big 12 poll. So my general quick thought there. Neilio, appreciate you being here, Neilio. As always, my friend, great to see you. Thank you for your support. Neilio says, hey, John, great show tonight as usual, my friend. Keep up the great content. We love it. Hashtag Go Cats. Go Cats indeed, Neilio. Thank you for that. Good vibes this weekend. Marquise Noel was balling out in his summer league game. At least yesterday, I saw a few highlights from today. Sounded like the shooting wasn't quite there for Noel, but still dishing it out, looking really good in his summer league debut with the Raptors. That was fun. Patrick Ngangba, who's probably going to be a 5-star by the time it's all said and done in this next high school recruiting class. K-State's seemingly in a pretty good position there Had a couple little birdies tell me that K-State is probably the leader there for his services. So that was very good news. A lot of good vibes. A lot of good vibes with the Cats right now. So appreciate you, Neilio. Thank you for being here, as always. Nate, what's up, Nate? Nate, I see a message retracted. Trying to find, Nate, if you updated that with something else, but I am not seeing anything as of right now. If I am missing something, Nate, you just let me know. Try to get my attention, flag me down, and I'll try to make sure that your comment actually gets on there. But for now, I will just thank you for the support, Nate, and appreciate you being here on the channel tonight. Garrett, what's up, Garrett? Garrett, thank you for your support. Garrett says, you think after Oklahoma and Texas left, the Big 12 asked Notre Dame to be the flagship school for the Big 12? And what was up with the story of Minnesota talking to the Big 12? Obviously wouldn't happen, but sneaky good fit. I don't really know what. I do remember that. I don't remember who put out that story. Who did? Let me see if I can Google that real quick. Who did put out the Minnesota? I feel like that was just like a random blog. Big 12 trying to woo Gophers away from Big 10. The Pioneer Press. It looks like the Pioneer Press. Yeah, I don't know. I have no idea. It's a very random one. Obviously, I mean, Minnesota, any of these schools, I was actually thinking today about how people at some point suggested, like, hey, Nebraska's had such a rough time in the Big 10. Would they actually just want to come back to the Big 12? And I'm like, look, the money's too much. I mean, it's just the same thing there with Minnesota, like total non-starter all the way around. So I don't actually know. Do I think the Big 12 asked Notre Dame? I don't know. I don't think there's any like serious conversation happening there because the Big 12 understands what the reality is. And the reality is like Notre Dame's pretty much going to be Big 10 or bust. I suppose maybe SEC, if the SEC can get in there at some point, but you're not. Notre Dame brings a lot of money. They would certainly up that $31.7 million per team total if they were to join the Big 12. But we just had a live show within the last week or two that was about a report on Notre Dame that said they're seeking 60 to 70 mil with their next TV deal, which would be on par with the Big 10 and the SEC. That's not happening. You're not getting from 31.7 per team to doubling that to 62 or something like that just by bringing Notre Dame in. They don't have that much value. So it's a non-starter. It wouldn't happen. It's not going to get them that money when they've got high-profile options. They've got the two best options out there. They could literally walk into either office, I think, right now and be taken right away because they are an additive, major, massive brand to be added to either league. Big 12 just doesn't have a puncher's chance there with that. So, I mean, hey, Minnesota and the Big 12 would be kind of fun, but yeah, I don't think that's happening because of money, and certainly Notre Dame is not happening because of money. Also, like the prestige thing, like I'm sure Notre Dame would much, much rather, even if the money were equal, be in the Big 10. Nate, what's up, Nate? There's Nate. Nate getting his comment in, so appreciate you, Nate. Nate Simons, thank you, sir. Nate says, your reaction to Dennis Dodd saying significant push to add UConn to the Big 12 on ESPN radio in Utah. I'm glad that you brought that up, Nate, because I have that quote on my note sheet. Here is the quote from Dennis Dodd. He was on with Benjamin Criddle at ESPN 960 in Utah. Dennis Dodd says, on what the next move is for Brett Yormark, quote, there will be a significant push to get UConn into the Big 12. I don't know which way that will go. They're terrible in football and have travel issues. He will have to get past the presidents. He will have to get that past the presidents. But the fact that it's being talked about now, especially in basketball, suggests there's some support with it. What do I make of it? I think that's pretty in line with what I think. I think Brett Yormark is definitely pushing for that. I think the reporting has made that pretty clear. We think of, or at least most in this sphere think of, Dennis Dodd as being a pro Big 12 reporter in this, obviously very plugged in on the Big 12 side. I know folks in Pac-12 country would probably accuse him of being kind of a puppet for the Big 12. I wouldn't go that far, but he clearly seems to be getting information from the Big 12 side, right? So if you're following the trail of where his information seems to be coming from, that would suggest to me that it's a message that the Big 12 is trying to get out there and clearly is coming from within Big 12 circles, which to me gives it a lot of credibility that this is something we've seen it enough times now, man. I think this is like a legacy sort of move for Yormark. He wants to do it. UConn is from up around his neck of the woods. He would love to get as much of a New York presence as he can, even if this isn't going to be all that much. And he clearly is trying to make something happen with basketball. And I do firmly believe is trying to long-term separate the two deals, football and basketball, and make extra money off the basketball media rights deal. So it's something that he would like to do. He's also like just more of a basketball guy in general. Now, he's also not an idiot, and he understands what drives realignment and drives these TV deals. But I think he's going to be a risk taker, forward thinking, and this fits a lot of his sensibilities. Great basketball school, helping that basketball contract and from around the Northeast. So I can see why it's appealing to him. Do I think that that's the right move? I don't know. I'm pretty undecided on UConn, man. That's a tough one. I think it's pretty risky. It strikes me a little bit as like Kevin Warren-esque, and not everything Kevin Warren did was bad. I mean, USC and UCLA to the Big Ten was huge for the conference. But certainly he was pursuing and he wanted to do more. He wanted to be more risky and aggressive. That's kind of what this move seems like. It could certainly pay off, but I understand the people that say, look, it'll dilute football. It's not really going to do you much good with ESPN. Like what is the point of this? And that football is not good at UConn. Getting better, but it has not been good. So I understand the pushback to it. I'm kind of in between. I think it would be a risk. I will just err on the side of I think Brett Yormark has earned a lot of trust from me. And I've been sitting here saying for a long time that you have to be willing to embrace risks and do this differently if you're the Big 12 now, not play the same game as the Big 10 and the SEC. And if I'm going to say that, I have to at least be somewhat open to this idea when it is Yormark trying to push for what would be more of a risky move with UConn. So I would also like to very much see what happens with the four corners in the Pac-12 before you officially pursued anything like that. Provo Cougar fan. What's up, Provo Cougar fan? Thank you for your support. Thank you for being here. Provo Cougar fan says Utah will be competitive immediately, but lose to Boise State in their new home, the Mountain West. Oh, boy. Yeah. We'll see if that happens. What is Utah this year? And look, I've been asked more questions about Utah and the Big Ten lately than the Mountain West. That's right. They've got that Baylor game. They go Florida at Baylor, and then Weber State. Whew, boy, that is one hell of a non-con there for Utah to play Florida at home and then go to Baylor. That'll be interesting. Then it looks like Weber State, and then we're into Pac-12 play the rest of the way. Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not going to go over the top in slandering Utah here, but I'm certainly not going to shut down, Provo Cougar fan, you coming on to get some shots in at your rival. If they had to go play on the blue turf at Boise State, that would be an interesting game, though I know Boise is not quite what they once were. Alan, what's up, Alan? Appreciate you being here, Alan. Thank you, sir. Alan says, John, excited to open the Big 12 with BYU, a class act. KU could be 4-0 going to Texas. Believe they would underestimate us again. Hope the Sunflowers showdown determines the bid for the Big 12 championship. Rock Chalk Jayhawk, Alan. Well, Alan, you should be pretty fired up about Kansas having the Offensive Player of the Year in the league. I know that people will scoff at me saying and being picked ninth, but it was, what did I see? It was the first time. God, I don't even remember when I saw the last time Kansas was not the last place pick in the Big 12 preseason poll. It's been a long time coming. So you take those victories where you can get them. Now, the one thing I will say is that Kansas has a much more difficult schedule this year, at least in my humble opinion, on paper here. Illinois and at Nevada, plus Missouri State. I mean, look, they'll beat Missouri State, but Illinois and at Nevada, I mean, that provides you the opportunity to be 3-0, but also, look, Illinois was pretty salty last year. They lost some from that defense, but that was a pretty feisty team that Mr. Bielema had. And I do think Brett Bielema is a legitimate Power 5 coach, so I don't think that will be totally easy. And Nevada, that's just a weird road trip thrown in there, and then you get BYU at home. Now, I think Kansas should be a pretty heavy favorite against BYU at home in that game to open conference play. So every opportunity is there. And look, I'm not here to underestimate Lance Leipold in Kansas. I think the reality that the rest of the league is going to have to face is that as long as that guy is there as the head coach of Kansas, they are certainly not going to be a pushover. They will be pretty salty. But you start getting a little further down into that Kansas schedule. It's a road trip to Texas. I know you think they'll underestimate you again. And I am the first guy to stand up and say Texas is going to do that to a lot of people. I do think they probably have gotten a little tired of hearing about that game a couple of years ago in Austin and would not take Kansas lightly. But I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. Then UCF at home, winnable, but also definitely losable. At Oklahoma State, winnable, but definitely losable. Oklahoma at home, I mean, winnable, definitely losable. At Iowa State, I'm not super high on Iowa State this year, but they will have a very good defense. That'll be a road game with a fired up crowd in November in Ames. That's not an easy setting to go into that game. They've got Tech and K-State at home back to back, both teams that were picked in that top four of the league. And then at Cincinnati. I mean, I just think it's a much more difficult schedule for Kansas this year than what they had last year. We'll see how it plays out, but I think Kansas is still going to be a bowl team for sure. I mean, I've got them at 7 wins. But Big 12 championship aspirations, I think that's maybe a bridge too far right now. Lance Leipold, though, if you want some optimism, he's recruiting very well. He's got a pretty nice recruiting class going at Kansas right now, so it looks like the influx of talent is going to be on the way. Where did I just leave off? Just Alan to Carson. What's up, Carson? Carson, much appreciate you, my friend. Thank you for being here. Carson says, sad outcome. Pac-12 merges with the Mountain West Conference. Well, that's probably that's your worst case scenario. You know, if there wind up being like 4, 5, 6 teams left in the Pac-12 when the dust all settles and this is all said and done, and they just go merge with the Mountain West Conference. That is definitely your bottom of the barrel Pac-12 sort of scenario, though. Is that does happen. So can't tell, Carson, if you are a Pac-12 fan or not, but if you are a Pac-12 fan, that would definitely be a sad way for that to go down, sad way for it to end. Cougar Tracks. What's up, Cougar Tracks? Cougar Tracks says, I really like Baylor's coach and athletic director. I'd like to see a rivalry get going between Baylor and BYU. Thoughts? I think that could, certainly. Obviously, some recent history with playing each other. I know a lot of people when we were kind of going back to the teams first being added to the conference, it seemed like that was a popular one that came up. Like, hey, Baylor and BYU could develop into a rivalry. I think the biggest thing that I've really seen and noticed in watching some of these develop over recent years, like newer ones, because as a K-State fan, I would say that I've seen the Iowa State rivalry really develop since about 2009, 2010. So we're talking about 10 to 15 year period. It developed because they played a ton of close games. It was every game was decided by a touchdown or less for 8 or 9 years in a row there. Iowa State had their uprising where for a moment in time, they had more spotlight than K-State. Now K-State's come back up. I think just playing close competitive games can really help a lot there in terms of developing that rivalry. And it just takes some time, takes some close competitive games, and it takes the fans starting to get after each other a little bit. That's how you can really create a rivalry. So I think the potential is there. I do. And I mean, you're right. Look, I love Dave Aranda. You guys know I gush about Aranda all the time. Love his approach. Love how different he is from what you think of as a traditional rah-rah football coach guy, with him being all about the Zen. I love it. I love Aranda's style, and I still think he's a very good coach. But low-key, I will say this is a big year for Baylor because you've now got 2 kind of disappointing years for Aranda sandwiched around an incredible year. So what was it? Was that the outlier, or is it really Aranda obviously needed a year to get up and going and get back on his feet. I'm not going to hold that first year against him, but is he more last year hovering around 500, or is he more the 12-win sort of thing? I think we still need to find that out about Dave Aranda. So it's a pretty big year as far as that goes. MJB Set 93. What's up, MJB Set 93? Thank you for being here as always, my friend. MJB Set 93 says, go Mean Green. During Big 12 Media Days, do you think the Pac-12 would consider making a big announcement to upstage then if they have good news? Interesting theory. That's a kind of theory I like, MJB Set. That's a good thought there and something that I would not have thought of. If the Pac-12 had shown me along the way that, 1, there was any reason to trust that they would have a deal done, or 2, that they were savvy enough to pull something like that off, I would be more inclined to welcome the possibility of that. But I don't think that we've really seen much of either, right? I think the Pac-12 has been more reactionary to things, not forward thinking like that. It would be akin to the Big 12's timing with announcing that the TV deal had been totally done, I's dotted, T's crossed, right as the Pac-12 was again having reports out there that they still didn't have anything to present to their presidents. It was another negative news cycle for them. And the Big 12 jumped right in and said, hey, you guys may not still have your deal. San Diego State may be screwed. But guess what? We've got our deal. No worries over here. That's the kind of move that you're talking about replaying there for the Pac-12 on the other side. I just have not seen the Pac-12 do a whole lot of that. But if they did, if they pulled it off, I would say kudos to them. I would tip my cap. If they actually had a deal signed, sealed, delivered, ready to go, and everybody was on board, that'd be a hell of a move. That'd be good timing if they had it. But I think I told somebody on one of the radio hits I did last week, like, it's just a fool's errand. If you're trying to make any prediction about when the Pac-12 is going to actually have this done or count on it being done, you deserve to have egg on your face, because there's just no reason to trust them right now until it actually does happen. So, but that is an interesting thought. That if the Pac-12 can make it happen, it might be worth like hanging on to it for an extra 12 hours or something, for instance, if you got it, if you can let that news break, if you can strategically have that news break during Big 12 Media Days. Now, it's not like Big 12 Media Days is going to draw a ton of headlines anyway, unless something crazy and unexpected happens. But yeah, it'd be a nice way to at least steal a little bit of the spotlight if you were them. Our web, what's up, our web? Our web says about UConn. And by the way, appreciate your support. Our web, as always, very generous, my friend. Thank you, sir. Our web says about UConn, if they are an option, it's because they are ESPN's home state team. As for football, Jim Mora is off to a good start. Of note, according to Jim Williams, UConn is one of 5 schools with a New York City radio affiliate. Okay, so yeah, the case there is about trying to build a bridge to New York and build a bridge to Bristol to be there with ESPN. And this is where I kind of defer to your Mark's expertise a little bit here, not just with the trust that I have in him, but the way that he sees the media landscape and how things are lining up. Like, remember, there were a lot of reasons to jump the Pac-12 in line to get that TV deal done, but one of those was really, I think he did a good job of seeing the landscape and seeing that big layoffs were coming. The money spigot was about to be shut off when it comes to live sports. People weren't just going to be entities weren't going to be just throwing money at it quite the way that they used to be. He really read the market very well on that. So if his read is that it's going to be really important and beneficial to, 1, break into New York City a little bit, and 2, be cozied right up to ESPN in their hometown, I will tend to trust him on that. Still acknowledging that I think it's a risky move to go push for UConn and to add UConn if that's what happens. But I defer to him a little bit more on that because, 1, of what he did with the TV deal, and 2, what he's done in his past. Man, he's just been such a shrewd guy, forward thinking with NASCAR, what he did when he was on the job there with the New Jersey/Brooklyn Nets. He's been good at nailing those sorts of big picture opportunities. So in my book, he's got latitude to do that right now. I think with most, he should have at least earned your trust to be able to go try to do something. I'm not saying you have to totally like it or totally agree with it, but he should have earned some significant level of trust with you with how he's handled the first year on the job since he took over, which I believe August 1st is that official 1-year anniversary of that. All right. We have got just a couple more minutes here. Delarick. So if you want to get something in, this is buzzer time. If you got a buzzer beater, click that $1 below the chat box where it says chat. Delarick says, I believe Texas Tech are the surprise team this year. I would say that Texas Tech is like the popular dark horse in the Big 12. Like, it's almost now to the point where calling them a dark horse might not quite be right, because they have gotten a lot of love, I think, as that team that could jump up. They're the team that, if we're going by what the pattern has been the last few years in the Big 12, with Baylor having a subpar season, jumping up and winning the league, K-State having a mediocre season, then jumping up and winning the league, Texas Tech last year just above 500, jumping up then and winning the league. Texas Tech fits that bill. So I think that's a big part of why they're so popular. Plus, Joe McGuire just has a ton of momentum around that program. They're recruiting really well. Clearly, they're infusing talent. They were tough, lad. They were pretty salty last year, and they've got good quarterback play if it can stay healthy. And to me, that's the biggest question for Texas Tech's season. Do the quarterbacks? I'm putting an S on that because we saw that they had multiple good quarterbacks there last year. Can they stay healthy? Because I worry about that a lot for Texas Tech, and that I think will determine how exactly their season is going to go. But I think that's a perfectly fine pick. I think that's a perfectly fine thought. I would have Texas Tech absolutely in my top 4, maybe in my top 3 for the Big 12 this upcoming year. So I'm with you on that. I think you're wise, Delarick, wise to be there. Our web, can you explain linear concepts? Asking for a friend. Well, somebody may need to explain it to the entire Pac-12. I had somewhere in my notes, somebody from the Pac-12 had like an angry quote about, was it the one I already read? Was it the one I already read from Robbins? Yeah, I guess it was the one I already read from Robbins where he was, I think the narrative that it's going to be an all streaming deal is ridiculous. Yeah. Okay. I think that means the narrative that it's going to be an all streaming deal is ridiculous. That was Robert Robbins. We may need to explain that for Mr. Robbins there, our web. So if you've got a line to him, please let me know. And we can make sure and get the word up to him there. Jim, what's up, Jim? Thank you for being here, Jim. Much appreciate. Very generous donation. Thank you, sir. Jim says, John, if Colorado and Arizona would join the Big 12 and UConn is school 3, who is the 4th to get to 16 schools? Memphis, Boise State, Tulane, or Fresno? I don't, man. This is where I'll be honest, nothing against these schools at all. Tulane, you beat my squad last year. This is not intended to, I fully admit it. You guys definitely pantsed us at home. That list, I don't like at all. I want nothing to do with that list. I don't. And I know like Memphis. Oh God, I saw like Baltimore pushing Memphis the other day. I don't see it. That doesn't do it. To me, that's watering the product down. I don't think any of those schools are really ready for that jump. I think that's really reaching. So if Colorado and Arizona come and your mark is like really committed to still bringing UConn, I don't think you would have to get to an even number. I don't think you would have to get to a round number there. I think you could just do the 3 if you really wanted to. I just would not be, you'd have to really sell me. I know I just said like your mark gets a lot of latitude and trust from me. You'd have to really freaking sell me on why on earth Memphis, Boise, Tulane, or Fresno is going to make any sort of financial sense for this league. I don't mean to crush the schools. I'm not trying to crush hopes and dreams. This is my personal opinion. I don't understand what exactly it would really add. I mean, like, does Memphis have a tremendous brand? I guess they're in a big city and it's a new state, kind of an SEC country, and you could try to water it and develop it and let it grow. I don't know, man. It doesn't do a whole lot for me. Boise has lost some of the luster from its heyday. Tulane, potential, yes, potential, and a good football program going right now, but I don't know. To me, that it's still feel like they need some more watering. They need some more developing before they would be actually ready for that sort of a jump. And like same deal with Fresno. Like we've talked about Fresno before on here. I thought that was a kind of a Pac-12 taking a little nugget and trying to run with it too far by projecting that the Big 12 would have actual interest in Fresno. So that's my thought, Jim, is like if you can get Colorado, Arizona, and UConn already to me is a risk enough. Don't water it down more by going and adding Memphis, Boise, Tulane, or Fresno. I would not want to do it. Nate, what's up, Nate? Thank you for being here, Nate. Nate chiming in again. Nate says, would love to watch UConn and Hilton, one of the two hardest places to play in the Big 12, in my biased opinion. You may well be right on that, man. I mean, they're definitely in tier 2. With tier 1 is Allen Fieldhouse, obviously all by itself. Tier 2, Iowa State's absolutely in that discussion. I mean, I think it kind of depends on like who's up and who's not. Like K-State, when Bramlage is rocking and K-State is good, I think it's absolutely in contention there too. But I think like Iowa State has been a little more consistent over the years in being a really loud environment and tough place to play. It would be cool. I mean, look, the basketball wise, no, I don't think like anybody has an argument against UConn in basketball. It'd be awesome if you bring them into the league. Like UConn Gonzaga, just from a pure basketball, take all the realignment stuff, the money, whatever out of it. If it's just creating more inventory where UConn and Gonzaga are going around the league and playing everybody in hoops, it'd be awesome, man. No doubt. That'd be great. That'd be great. I think we would all be on board for that part of it. Christian, what's up, Christian? Christian says, Pac-12 media days. Kliavkov says they still don't have a deal. Then Arizona and Colorado presidents put on Big 12 caps and walk off the stage. What a beautiful day. That would be great, man. If this all ends with the Big 12 landing a school because they do a commitment style ceremony with the hats on the table and somebody just pick up the Pac-12 hat and then throw it, pick up the Big 12 hat, put it on. I mean, I would love that. They could just send Dion out to do it. Like if Colorado is going to do it, you might as well have Dion out there doing it. That would totally fit the vibe going on in Boulder right now. So thank you for that, Christian. That is a great thought. And I would love for Deion Sanders to walk out and do that. I don't know who gets to do it at Arizona. Maybe like Jason Shear. Could they just get Shear to do it? Or like, I don't know who the best Arizona alum is for this. I might have to think on that a little bit more. But yeah, I'm down with that idea. Rob, what's up, Rob? Rob S. hitting us here before the buzzer. Rob says, calling it, the Pac-12 deal will be $28 million, but with the conference paying for production, so a net of $21 to $23 million. That will be for 10 teams and no pro rata. Yeah, that would not be a great deal for them. That would not be a great deal. I still, my latest feeling, Rob, has been like there's been enough smoke around this idea that it would be some sort of an incentive-laden deal where if it's going to be with a streamer like Apple or something, there would be incentives baked in to where like, hey, we could make as much as $35 million a team, but that's only if we hit X number of benchmarks in subscribers or viewers or whatever it would be for certain games, and that they would be very difficult to actually obtain. And it would give the Pac-12 a way to market it as like, hey, we got our schools up to this amount of money, and then there would be no way to prove like how much they're actually going to get until those games actually happen, and they could have some level of like, well, hey, look, we don't know, but right now the possibility is still out there, and that number is higher than anything the Big 12 has. We have the potential to be making more money than the Big 12. I still feel like that's my latest thought, where my gut would be on what that actually winds up being. But what I do know is it continues to be fairly exhausting, right? I think we can all agree on that. It continues to be fairly exhausting to try and follow this damn Pac-12 deal. But we roll on, and next week it rolls into Arlington. Stay tuned to the channel. I'm not sure, like, I'll see what my schedule is going to be like and what my internet is going to be like as far as whether or not I'd be doing a live show this Wednesday. But I will for sure be getting like taped content that I can put up on the channel. So I have some plans in the works as far as that goes. I'm going to try and finally bust out like some YouTube shorts, because I know everybody tells me I need to try to do that. This would be the perfect opportunity for that, to get some cool content for you. So some things are in the works. This should be a good content week here on the channel. Make sure that you stay tuned. I'll keep you guys updated. I'll keep it coming. Spread the word about the channel, friends, family, Facebook, Twitter, Threads, Instagram, whatever it might be, fan groups for teams that you follow, for fans of the league. Make sure that they know about the channel. Let's continue to grow this thing. Appreciate all the guys that are here. Like the video on your way out the door. Leave a comment in the comments section. Anything helps, even if you're telling me I suck. That's all great. John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo to support the channel as well. Justin beats the buzzer by saying, I wish all my old AAC bros success in the Big 12. Very nice. Very nice from Justin. Jeremy points out the light switch is down, up, up. Love you guys. Love it. Love it. Great way to end the chat. Fun one tonight. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and have a great week. We'll talk to you soon.